What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Cameron Selby, sitting here solo. We're going to recap and react to the trade that just took place last night, with George Pickens being on his way to Dallas. In the middle of the night when everybody's dreaming sweet dreams, Dallas and Pittsburgh collectively, 2 weeks after the draft, very interesting timing, went ahead and made a move. So we're going to have to do a recap and reaction really quick to it. We're going to be trying to do more of these with instant reactions and short 15-20 minute clips. We just hit 250 subs. If you haven't joined the community, please like, comment, subscribe. We want to react and have more interaction and discussion with you guys. So let's get right into it. All right. So trade. George Pickens, like I said, going to Dallas in addition to a 2026 6th-round pick. Steelers are receiving the 2023 round pick from Dallas in addition to the 2027 5th-round pick. So a couple picks, pick swap in terms of later round picks between years. But the big story is a 3rd-round pick for next year's draft is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers for an expiring contract, and George Pickens, who has been a very flashy and polarizing receiver, to say the least, since he set foot in the NFL. Let's get into it. Starting off on the Pittsburgh side, they're just kind of starting to recoup and add up some picks. The draft is taking place actually in Pittsburgh next year in 2026. So I don't know if they just want to be the talk of the night or the weekend, but already 11 picks, including 4 compensatory picks, projected to be in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. And all of their picks that they've already had so far, and then the 3rd round pick like we just mentioned. So they're loading up, stocking up, and essentially it's a very interesting move and timing, all that stuff for Pittsburgh. This has been one of the weirdest off seasons I can remember Pittsburgh. They're just the epitome of just stability, longevity. Haven't had a losing season since 2003. And all of a sudden now it just very contradictory moves of just, hey, losing a lot of guys, but we're going to trade for a wide receiver looking for a big deal in itself, in addition to a 2nd-round pick from this past year's draft. Kind of contradictory. Also the quarterback concern. We'll get into that in a minute. But the biggest thing is, obviously, George Pickens kind of has rubbed people the wrong way. He's got some diva-ish instincts, mentalities on occasion when we go around to it, because when it comes down to it, that's kind of what Pittsburgh's MO is hey, they don't mind taking chances on diva receivers, but then they sell high and they get rid of others on the way over here. I mean, there's several examples over the last decade and a half. I mean, San Antonio Holmes and his legal issues got out of it late 5th-round pick, but he didn't have the 750 yards or the big-time contract that the Jets gave him the rest of his career. Martavis Bryant suspended an entire season. Raiders took a chance with a 3rd-round pick, out of the league 1 year later. Mike Wallace, they received a 3rd-round compensatory pick because he was a big signing for Miami back in the day. He only played 2 seasons with them, then was traded for a 7th-rounder. Chase Claypool was a recent one that was very, very mind-boggling, which they basically got a end of 1st-round pick for him from Chicago, which was the 32nd pick. And he played 10 games with them over 2 seasons, had less than 200 yards. He's out of the league now. And that very pick turned into Joey Porter Jr., if you know, being their star corner at the very moment. Juju Smith-Schuster, another guy. They didn't receive compensation for him, but since he left, he had a 900-yard season with 3 touchdowns with Kansas City, but he's been back and forth and back-to-back seasons under 300 yards, and he's less than 30 years old, so kind of moved on at the right time. Deontay Johnson, another guy that didn't really get a ton of return, but they got off of him. Deontay's been on 4 teams in 12 months. Antonio Brown, obviously the most popular and polarizing one because he is one of the best receivers of this generation. They traded for a 3rd-round and 5th-round pick from Oakland for him. He literally didn't even play it down for them. And then he went to the other team in the Patriots. He played 1 game, and then he was let go because of his issues. And obviously, we saw how his career turned out. So they usually have a pretty good track record. Obviously, the biggest winners of this is Calvin Johnson or Roman Wilson. Notice I didn't say and, because of the fact that because of their quarterback situation being currently Mason Rudolph as the starter, I can't anticipate 3 successful pass catchers or even 4 or even 5 skill group players in general having success. So Calvin Austin had some promise. We had some flyers on him in showdown contests last year when he was really cheap. It worked out for us. It was fun. But he's currently projected to be the starting slot. And then Roman Wilson was a day 2 pick in 2024 in a loaded receiver class. Obviously, he was the big name coming from Michigan as their number 1 receiver. He spent most of the year last year banged up, started the year with an ankle injury and just never really got going. So one of them is able to step into a lot of snaps and opportunity. I don't know if either one will take advantage of it, but either way, both of them have the opportunity to do so. But the loser being, Mason Rudolph, Aaron Rodgers, if you still believe in that, Will Howard, if you believe in, the late round, I think it was a 5th round pick that they just invested in him. Somebody, whoever it is, all you got is DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, and insert, Jag wide receiver, to say the least. The biggest takeaway is just Pittsburgh it might be an eyesore, especially if DK were to go down or something of that nature offensively this year. Arthur Smith, former coach of the Atlanta Falcons, doesn't really give you a whole lot of hope that, hey, they're going to make the most and get the most out of the skill players and the hand that they're dealt, so to speak. So it's going to be hard to watch. There's just a whole lot of limitations of what they can do this year with currently how the roster is constructed. From the Dallas side of things, first thing, they are without 3 picks already. They've made a lot of short-term deals. Kyer Elam, former first-round pick, Kenneth Murray, former first-round pick, traded a late 6th and a late 7th in the 2026 draft for those respective guys. And then now, obviously, the 3rd-round pick is no longer there. So they're already kind of without a ton of draft capital going into next year. But the biggest thing, the writing was on the wall that some kind of move like this was going to happen. Dallas, everybody and their mom mocked a wide receiver to them in round 1. Even us reluctantly did so because we just had no idea how the receiver position was even going to unfold if that weren't the case. But not only did they not pick one in the first round, they didn't pick one at all in the draft. And riding with the Jonathan Mingo and the Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin, that's just not good enough for a team that's trying to rebound, have a success offensively with all the changes that they're undergoing. Obviously losing another Hall of Famer in Zach Martin, consecutive seasons that they lost a big-time offensive lineman, and trying to replace that. Okay receiving room outside of CeeDee Lamb, who's obviously awesome, but at the same time, you don't want to run him to the ground. Dak and CeeDee both ended the season on IR last year due to a shoulder injury, which CeeDee, maybe he would have played if they had something to play for and Dak wasn't already out for the year due to his hamstring. But at the end of the day, you don't want to start, having wide receiver ones just, hey, you got to throw it to them 15 times a game until they break, and then you're kind of screwed. That's kind of the direction that felt like Dallas was heading based on losing, they're starting running back 2 straight seasons, offensive line changes. Brandon Cooks is gone, and then they didn't replace him. They just are kind of going to ride with it after the draft. But George Pickens, at least in the short term, it makes a ton of sense from a fantasy perspective. I like the move a lot, at least this year, for all parties involved, especially Dak, because Dak, when he does have a capable receiving core, he can be a top 5, upside quarterback as a fantasy player. 2023, he was second in MVP voting. He was QB3 overall. CeeDee Lamb was the number 1 skill player overall in that season. And then Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson in their roles as a 2 and 3 in the offense, respectively, and Tony Pollard. Everybody had success. Everybody ate when Dallas was scoring 30 points a game, coming off 12-win seasons. But then last year, everybody took a step back because of just scheme, players not producing. Other than CeeDee Lamb until he went down, it was all a bust from a Dallas perspective. So they're going to try to turn it around. At least the numbers will be there. I would say so, because I do anticipate Dallas playing a little bit more from behind than they've been accustomed to over the last couple seasons. But in terms of salary implications, Pittsburgh, they've got less than just about a $500,000 cap hit this year, but free agency's passed, draft has passed. You're not really looking to open up salary cap space at this point anymore. So that's what it is, off the books in 2026. So like I said, moving off at the exact time before having to pay him. And it helps easily stomach the Metcalf extension, which if I'm the GM, that's not necessarily the move I'm going to make. That's not the track record that Pittsburgh usually does. But at the end of the day, they did extend him 5 years, 150, and he has a $31 million cap hit that leads the team next year. They need to stomach that in some way, shape, or form. And no matter the quarterback direction you go, even if you go Aaron Rodgers or, just leave it with all these guys and, invest in a quarterback early next year and next draft, which is supposed to be much better, you're not really paying anybody. TJ Watt and Minka kind of coming out of their primes and saying, hey, do we want one more big deal with them, or are we going to move on from them? But outside of that, there's not really a ton of huge extensions looming, like we will get into for Dallas in the short term, which it felt like we've been talking about this for years for every single player that they draft, because they draft well. Pittsburgh does as well, but again, they've kind of let a lot of people walk. Dan Moore, a lot of guys. That's the reason that they have 4 compensatory picks coming in next year, is because of letting guys walk. And so they have the 4th fewest salary cap allocation in terms of next year, over $100 million in cap space. They're going to have room and the ability to turn it around. Whether they do or not remains to be seen. Whether or not Mike Tomlin, after a foreseeable down year, stays and returns, or if he wants to take a hike and they just completely reset. Either way, the opportunity is there to turn it around, but it seems like they've got a little bit more work to do, and this is going to be a very, very interesting transition year for them. In terms of Dallas, this year cap hit again doesn't really matter that much, but $3.66 million, very reasonable. Problem is 10th most salary cap allocation next year, about $20 million in cap space. Obviously, that can be adjusted with another restructure of Dallas, but the difference is that Patrick Mahomes, when he signed his extension for 10 years, they're doing restructures every year. It's not kicking the can down the road. It's basically just giving him more money and more years on the back end of things, and making those 10 years actually last 10 years. Whereas Dallas, they're kicking the can down the road. Basically, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And teams like New Orleans and the Rams, which somehow got out of that, they're able to, make moves and adjustments. But Dallas waited a year too late for CD, waited a year too late for this. Micah Parsons, that 10th most salary cap space allocated, that does not even include him on the roster. So a lot of money is going his way if Dallas is going to keep him. And I would be shocked if they weren't going to lock him up in the future. But, Myles Garrett just reset the non-quarterback market. So I don't know if they're going to exceed that, match that, or make it the second most. But either way, he's going to be a top 3 all-time paid non-quarterback after this year. And yeah, the first cap hit is not going to be a ton, but again, you're running out of money. And it's not like you're that close anymore to contending. So George Pickens kind of muddies that a little bit in terms of the long-term outlook, because if he does have success, awesome. Now you got to pay him. And he's going into free agency next year. It could go one or two ways. You could let him walk. If somebody signs him to a big 25-esque $1 million deal, or upwards of 30 like T. Higgins just got, I would compare them very similarly in terms of talent. Yeah, you'll get a late 3rd round pick. If he has a somewhat down year, they want to move off. Somebody signs him for 18 to 20, or a 1 year, $20 million deal, whatever. They want to take a gamble. Maybe that turns into a 4th rounder. But either way, you're basically for a rental of 1 year to help, your offense succeed and the others around it succeed. You're moving back a couple spots in the draft. It's not the biggest deal. Dallas does draft well. You want to make fun of them all you want for not winning a Super Bowl. They have been one of the best drafting teams over the last decade. So that is helpful in the long term in terms of that. But for the record, franchise tag has been going up every year for receivers. And I don't know at what point it's going to bottom out, because it seems like a lot of the wide receiver 2 contracts that just kind of ballooned up. Christian Kirk, I've mentioned this so many times. Christian Kirk getting signed $20 million, but at the time, Saquon Barkley barely can get half that. Those are finally kind of rectifying themselves, because the running back contracts are panning out, at least from last year. Wide receiver contracts, a lot of people are getting moved off of those certain guys. Gabe Davis, for example, just got released today after signing a $13 million a year deal last year, or last offseason. So I would anticipate it being 25, 26 million. All of that is guaranteed if you do the franchise tag. I did misspeak, but all of that is a cap hit. Guaranteed wise, they can trade him from the franchise tag and it won't affect them at all. But in terms of it, you're going to franchise tag and he's going to be on the roster, there is no reducing that unless there's an extension there. So that's kind of Dallas's short-term outlook in terms of the cap. Final thoughts, though, in terms of just this season. Pittsburgh, like I said earlier, this is one of the weirdest off seasons I can remember from this kind of team. It's going to be tough to watch if, they aren't going to blow people's minds and completely shock the world with what they have, because this is the least talented offense that we might have seen since the Charlie Batch days and pre 2005 Super Bowl with Ben Roethlisberger being drafted there. Like that's how long it's been since this offense has been just complete eyesore, and that's kind of what I anticipate going into the next year. So maybe they're just punting. Maybe they're just saying, "Hey, we're not close. We need to reset, revamp, and continue this longevity." The good franchises, you can't just always be successful. You're going to have down years every now and again, especially when you're in transition from, "Hey, we had this Hall of Fame quarterback, and we have not successfully replaced him. The Kenny Pickett didn't work out." Obviously, this year, everybody anticipated them taking the quarterback. It was not Shedeur Sanders. It was a Will Howard. Either way, their franchise quarterback is not on the roster. I would say that. And until that happens, they're going to be in transition. So I think doing that, not having a ton of money allocated to other resources right now, is going to help them in the long run. If there is a franchise that can turn things around, if a Houston can do it, they can do it. That's kind of how I say. But for the time being, it seems like that non-losing record streak of Mike Tomlin's entire Pittsburgh Steelers career might be coming into in this year. Dallas, again, it's a low-risk move, expiring deal. If it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, you're out a third-round pick, basically a swap. Who knows? But I don't know if it really moves the needle, though. I was really trending towards putting Dallas last in the NFC East, believe it or not. And even being a fan, doesn't matter. I have not been impressed with the roster moves. Everything seems like a one-year rental. Even the Brian Schottenheimer, you didn't interview anybody else. And everything just seems like this year does not matter. And none of this is long-term. So, yeah, short-term fantasy-wise, it's going to be fun. Picking George Pickens on DFS weekends and CeeDee Lamb, certain matchups, and Dak, cool. That doesn't matter. We're talking about when is Dallas going to break the Super Bowl drought. It's not taking place this year. Before this trade, I think their line in terms of their wins was set at 7.5, and it was juiced to the under. So that's kind of how people are viewing this team. The Giants, meanwhile, add to an already really strong offensive or defensive line, and now all of a sudden without Bill Carter could be a top 3 line in football. So that doesn't mean, Giants sneaky playoff team. But guess what? Russell Wilson, believe it or not, led them to the playoff, led Pittsburgh to the playoffs last year, and it wouldn't be shocking to see them win 6 or 7 games. Dallas, you're right in that window of 6 to 8 wins. I'm sorry, that kind of is what it is. It's not like your schedule is very forgiving either. I've seen some people say that they're very optimistic this year. I'm not. It doesn't move the needle at all. You're still a wide gap away from Philly and from Washington. You might steal one from them, but at the end of the day, you're probably going 1-3 or 0-4 against those two teams. Wouldn't be shocked if you dropped one in New York, and then you basically at that point got to go 8-3-ish the rest of the way if you're going to win 2 games in the division in terms of making the postseason, because you had a 10-win NFC team last year missed the playoffs. So you've got a long way to go. I don't really think it moves the needle, like I said, but I could be wrong. I am never afraid to be wrong, especially if I'm wrong about Dallas. So, but yeah, that kind of wraps it up. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, let us know what you think. What are your thoughts on this move? Whether you're a Steeler fan, Cowboy fan, fantasy fan, it doesn't matter. What do you think about this move? Who won it? Who lost it? Does it really matter for either one? Want to hear your thoughts below, but we appreciate you guys tuning in. Can't wait to see all you guys next time. Have a good one.